Serge, do you want to take us away?
Thanks. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. We are here for the Surrey CCC members forum, conducted for the first time ever, I think, via Zoom. Just to go through a few technicalities. For those of you that don't know me, I'm John Surtees, as it says, and I'm the head of comms here at the club. And yeah, I'll be hosting the forum. Everyone will remain on mute for the duration to ensure the principal speakers can always be heard. We're going to start with Richard Thompson, the chairman. He'll hand over to Richard Gould, the chief executive. We'll then hear from Alec Stewart, director of cricket. After that, I will put a series of pre-submitted questions that people have been emailing in over the last couple of weeks to Stewie, both Richards and Rory Burns, the club captain, who is also on the call. If there are any specific points you'd like to follow up on, please ask questions using the chat function provided by Zoom. I see quite a few of you have already found that. Messages are flowing in, which is great. We'll be looking at that throughout and bringing in. We can't guarantee we'll bring in everything that's put in there, but we'll guarantee we'll bring in a lot that's put in there just to make sure the conversation flows. And just to let you all know, this forum is being recorded, and should the technical aspects work, how we hope they will, it will be uploaded to the club website at some stage in the next 48 hours or so. So if you have to leave and you want to catch up later, you'll be able to. Equally, if you have friends and they're unable to make it, you'll be able to send them a link and they can watch this back at their leisure. So without further ado, I will first hand over to our chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Richard Thompson.
Thank you, John. Well, look, welcome everybody. I thought it's appropriate just to show I can use technology, and the sign behind me is an old bus sign to and from the Oval, something that a lot of us are missing at the moment. That was actually used during the war. And for my generation, this is about the closest thing that we've come to war, living through a global pandemic. But that sign seemed to sum it up for me. But certainly welcome to our first ever members Zoom call. We wanted to find a way of reaching out to you, and obviously it appears technology is working well. Looking at some very familiar faces on this call already. Good to see our president Ken Schofield's here and our deputy president David Pateman as well. So I better be careful what I say because I'm being watched and recorded. But certainly I hope you're feeling okay and you're well in this very bewildering time for all of us. That sometimes it feels quite overwhelming, and the reality is we are all in this together. Our love of cricket and Surrey is what brings us together, and it's just a great shame we're not in a position to be able to have already enjoyed some cricket and hear the sound of Leather and Willow at the best ground in the world. But we certainly sincerely hope that will be the case quite soon. And I think the purpose of this call is to give you as much of an update as we can as possible. And for you, obviously, to ask as many questions as you would like to and as time allows. I mean, we are in our 175th year, a year that we started to celebrate. And probably for most of us, certainly for me, I think that brilliant dinner that if you were there, you were lucky enough to attend, was probably the last time any of us were actually out having a dinner and not being socially distanced. So I think since then we've been in lockdown, so it's nearly 7 weeks now. Some of you may have had a phone call. We reached out to a number of members, starting with the oldest. And I know there's more calls coming from the players. Myself, I made some calls as well, just to see how you were, to give that sense that there's no good me saying and talking a lot about the Surrey family if we don't behave like a family. And by doing that, that was to see that you were okay, if there's anything we could do for you. And just give that sense that you aren't as isolated as you think you are, and that's the purpose of this call today. Life does go on. I mean, we'll hear from Rory and Alec a bit later in terms of what is happening there. But the great thing is our One Oval Square is still being built. The builders haven't left the site at all during this process. So we're very lucky that that continues to happen. And I think it's a sign of our ambition that as a club, we've lived through 2 world wars. We've been here for 175 years, and we intend to be here for another 175 years and get through this. There are a few glimmers of hope that we will be able to get out soon, but certainly at the moment that isn't the case. But in terms of how we're planning and looking forward, we're doing that with just as much ambition and positivity as we have done over the last 10 years as such. And I think those that have got access to technology, hopefully you've seen Reflex, which is our version of Netflix. which has got some fantastic archive, stuff that we've compiled over the last few years, that if you haven't got it, we can put the link back up on the website. So please put a question over and we'll get that link put there. Any of you that aren't following or aren't on Twitter, I think Church's tweets have been a delight every day, have kept us on our toes and hopefully brought a smile to our faces to keep you engaged and entertained. And certainly there's been a lot of press as well, where there's no cricket to talk about. There's other things filling that vacuum, and this call will help deal with some of the misinformation that I think has been put out there with regards to the 100, Test cricket generally, where we'll be playing, how we'll be playing, etc. So we want to give as much clarity around that as possible. So I think that's all from me at this stage. We're kind of getting to the Q&A. I'll hand back to Serts and then I'll close off at the end. But thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you found this call very useful and valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take over from there. Thank you very much, Chairman. Just give a bit more, I suppose, context and update you in terms of what the season may look like. We now know from the decision made by the ECB on Friday that there'll be no cricket before the 1st of July. The ECB are, though, putting lots of different schedules together to try and get as much cricket in as possible, whether that be cricket starting in July, August, or even, God forbid it, September. Their priorities in terms of domestic competitions are red ball cricket, the Championship, and T20 Blast. I say red ball cricket and Championship. At the moment, we've probably lost 9 Championship games, and there is perhaps a feeling that that if we lose many more than that, having a Championship whereby we have promotion and relegation, that might be a moot point. But there is a priority to ensure that we do have competitive red ball cricket. Maybe it'll be regional competition. We're not quite sure yet. Ditto with T20 Blast. Clearly, that has been postponed, and that will be put back until later in the season. Again, August, September is when that is likely to take place. The tickets, we have sold quite a lot of tickets for that. We will be able to do refunds for those tickets if people can't make the new dates. But we hope to get a reasonable Blast schedule out and about as soon as we can. The One Day Cup competition is probably going to be scheduled for the earlier stages of the season, as and when it happens. That's viewed as a slightly less important format this year, and so if the season gets further delayed and it's the One Day competition that misses out, then that's least bad. The 100 was a board meeting, ECB board meeting today, and everybody believes that the 100 will be cancelled for this year. In terms of international cricket, we were due to host a West Indies Test match on the 4th of June, and clearly that has now been postponed. We don't know when it is going to be rescheduled, and in truth, we don't know where it is going to be rescheduled. If it is a game that can be held here, refunds for that game will still be available, even if it's a new date due to take place at the Kia Oval, and we'll make sure that all those refund details are passed out as soon as we can, which will be once there's a decision on the rescheduling elements of it. Ditto for the Ireland ODI with regards to refunds for those games. You know, we operate in a really upfront manner, and those games are insured, and so full refunds will be available for those. With regards to where international cricket is going to be played and how it's going to be played, there has been a lot of speculation about being played behind closed doors or being played in biosecure environments. I did have some time in the army, and for 2 years of that, I served in a biological warfare regiment. And I'm not sure there is any such thing as a biosecure environment. Even my fridge doesn't come into that category. But clearly, there's going to have to be bioconfidence measures that get put in place for wherever the cricket takes place. Firstly, to make sure that travelling teams feel confident and safe to come and play cricket. Secondly, for our own players, to make sure that when we are getting back and playing cricket, they feel safe and secure. And then, of course, for you, our members and supporters, in terms of trying to make sure that when we can get people back into the ground to watch the cricket, then you feel safe and secure. In the event that it is played county cricket is played behind closed doors in the first instance, all of those games being played at the Oval will be broadcast. They'll all be on Facebook. You'll all be able to watch those. There may be at some stage a phasing where people are allowed into grounds, but perhaps only 5–10% of capacity. And if that's the case, then of course it's our members that will receive the absolute first priority in terms of coming in to watch cricket. But that is me second guessing, and that is us sort of planning ahead, really trying to understand all the different variations that may occur. In terms of club finances, the club had a good year last year, and the cash balances that we were able to build up last year have put us in a reasonable position for this year. That's not to say that we haven't been taking significant cost-cutting measures. We have taken a lot of cost-cutting measures. We're continuing to try and take costs out of the business and the club on a daily basis. There have been reductions in terms of salaries. There have been reductions in terms of other proposed payments. We have received some assistance as well. The rates holiday has helped us significantly. There has been some assistance from the ECB, although we're hopeful that there is more on the way. We're trying to be as prudent as we possibly can. We're in a reasonable position, but we don't know how long this is going to go on for. And cash is really important for businesses or family groups. All of that is extremely, cash is king at the moment. And we need to make sure that we monitor that as carefully as possible, and we will do so. The annual general meeting that was due to take place clearly has been postponed. The annual accounts are in the process of being signed off by the auditors, and they will be issued to members as soon as possible, as soon as they're finally signed off. And then we hope to get a date for the AGM. Before too long. Our preference would be to have an AGM where the members can come back into the club, and that's certainly our preference. The fallback measure may be something such as this Zoom call. I think that's all I wanted to say in the first instance in terms of putting into context. And now I'd like to hand over to Alec and let him give you more insight with regards to the context of cricket before we start getting into some of the questions.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening, members. Hope you're all well and hope you're coping in these testing and challenging times. But most importantly, make sure you stay fit and healthy. We're all in unknown territory, which is pretty obvious. We should be preparing to play against Warwickshire on Friday, having already beaten Somerset and Yorkshire by an innings. But instead, we're sat here with this forum. The Chief mentioned the earliest we're going to play is this part of July. Nothing before then. Will it be the 1st of July? Will it be later? We don't know, but we will plan accordingly. You'll have noticed that Surrey and Lancashire, I believe, are the only two counties not to have furloughed their players. So Burns will come in a while, but our players are adhering to a very good strength and conditioning programme, which our head of S&C, Darren Vaness, has put together. Effectively, we are still in February. If we're talking about playing in July at the earliest, we're effectively still in February training mode. So from a cricket point of view, we wouldn't be doing too much cricket skill sets. It would be building up for when we do then meet. That will be 4 or 5 weeks. So once we get the thumbs up from the ECB, then it will be 4 to 5 weeks of a pre-season in the nets back at the ground. Lee is working his socks off with some of his staff to make sure that the ground looks immaculate. The nets will be in good condition and the centre wickets will be too for when we need to use them. So it will be continue the strength and conditioning programme, wait to find out the fixtures, then put that pre-season programme in place, which is already penciled in. We'll try and organise a pre-season game, which we would have done. We were due to have played Sussex and Middlesex early April, leading into the university game and then the Somerset game. We'd still look to have a game of some kind once we know what the structure looks like, to make sure we're then absolutely game ready for when the fixtures do start. But at the minute, you know, these are just guesstimates, but we have to be prepared. We've got to have plans. These plans have got to be flexible. We've got to be adaptable. Obviously, we've got to be positive, but also got to be realistic in where we find ourselves in the current situation. So I'd like to think we are doing all we can as a club, certainly as cricket, to make sure the players are ready for if and when we do get the thumbs up to go. From an overseas player point of view, you'll have seen that both Michael Neser and Darcy Short have agreed to not come over. That was good conversation, both very, very good people. I've just started chats as well with Shadab Khan and his management company. And if we're not going to be playing cricket, and if we're not going to be playing in front of crowds, I'd be very surprised if any county has an overseas player, and it would be no different. From our own point of view, we've got some players, and Michael Divenuto, he's in Australia with his family. He went back there as soon as the shutdown started. Mornay Morkel is in Sydney with his family. Hashim Amla and Murray Archer in South Africa with their families, and Nico Reefer is in Barbados with his family. So it was important that in these tough times that our players and coaches are with family. Nothing more important than family. And then if and when we get the thumbs up, we'll then look at getting them back over here to then resume cricket. But what I can tell you is, the lads have been outstanding. Our team psychologist, Andrea First, is in regular contact to make sure from a mental health point of view that they are coping. The captain is leading, as you'd expect, by example. He's got his own player leadership group, and they check in on their fellow players as well, as do we as cricket management. So yes, we're in uncharted waters. Yes, it's testing times, but we've got to remain positive. We've got to remain realistic, and hopefully, touch wood, we will see some cricket sooner rather than later, because that's what we need. That's why you're members, and that's why we're involved in a game of cricket.
Thank you very much, Julie. And thanks to both the Richards for very thorough initial updates. There's been questions flying in on the chat. We've also had obviously a lot of questions in over the past couple of weeks since we announced this. So we'll start with some of the questions that have been sitting in the inbox for a while, and we'll bring it to you, Burnsy, first, if that's cool. First question for you, Burnsy, is from Richard Bailey, who is a member in Wallington. Richard asks, would you have been fit for the Somerset game if we hadn't been in lockdown?
Yes, I would have been. Obviously, I've been fortunate in terms of coronavirus, probably one of the people that have actually benefited from it, and given myself a little bit longer to fully recover and get myself right. But if that game had gone ahead, then yeah, I'd have been fit.
Great. Another question for you, Rory. This one comes from David Tigger Hannon. Thanks, David. He says, how are members reacting to getting calls from the players?
I think they quite enjoyed it. Gareth Batty managed to get the wrong call list. So, you know, the fortunate people on my call list got a double whammy, the previous captain, the current captain. So I think it went down quite a treat. I offered to do some shopping for a couple of members, and yeah, it was just actually a really fun experience, particularly in these sort of uncertain times that we're in. Just to sort of connect again on that human level was a really nice thing to do. So yeah,
that's great. Moving on to Amin Rahim, who's from Leytonstone. He says, how do you presently occupy your time? Apparently, he's trying to master tiddlywinks. So good on him.
Yeah, good on him, trying to master tiddlywinks. I'm not. Currently, yeah, as Stewie alluded to there, you know, we've been fortunate enough to be able to take home some of the Oval Gin. Daz is obviously putting us programs and putting us through our paces. So my front room and my balcony has been turned into various different points. And then outside that, we're obviously doing a bit of homework as a group. Just so if/when we do get that nod to get back out on the turf, that we're fully prepared.
Great. Paul Grant is in the chat room, Rory. He's asked, what have you made of Captain Tom Moore? and his efforts, and have the Surrey boys been involved in fundraising and other efforts themselves?
Yeah, it was a Herculean effort, wasn't it, from him? And obviously, you know, the way that the public took to it, that was amazing to see. So yeah, a massive congrats to him. I've seen he's a big cricket fan. You obviously got a couple of calls from Joe Root and that sort of stuff, which was amazing to see. And it's a nice pick me up in this time. Fundraising efforts, I think you might have seen go out on the Surrey Twitter the other day. Probably the notable mentions Amar Verdi and his Nishkam Swat, where he's helping out the homeless currently and getting them food. Ricky's obviously become a volunteer for the NHS, and anyone around him anyone that's near the Salisbury area that needs anything can always get in touch with Ricky. And yeah, apart from that, I think there's been a lot of 5K runs and the old nominate, donate, and I think the guys have put up some pretty impressive times. So that's been us.
One that's just come in. I think this one needs asking. It's from Ollie Massey. This one, Burns. He says, "How are you keeping your lid in such good shape without access to a barber?" I'm actually letting it grow out and just using a lot of product to slick it back quite nicely. So they're my tips, and obviously letting some pretty questionable facial hair grow on my face. Excellent. Stewie, move on to you. Amin from Leytonstone, he had a question for you as well. He wants to know how much the club has paid to players. You mentioned to Nisa and players to cancel their contracts, and also the same question for you. What's your new hobby to fill up the days in lockdown?
First up, I've never discussed players' contracts publicly, because that's wrong. But what I will tell you though, it's cost the club absolutely nothing. So that's a fact. And hobbies, we're trying to work out how to use Zoom correctly and stay on calls. I keep getting cut off, so if I do disappear during this, I will be okay and I'll try and get back on. But as regards to hobbies, I'd love to have time, but the Chiefs give me more and more work, so I think I'm working harder now than when the cricket's actually on.
Okay, great. We're up to 361 people on the call now, which is fantastic. So thanks everyone for your time this evening. Stewie, staying with you, we've got a question from a member, Reese Benjamin from Harrow. Reese asks, are the ECB talking to counties about ways to reconstitute the season, including costs associated with playing abroad in the 20 to 21 winter? And are the clubs are Surrey pushing for any particular proposal?
Now, the Chief may want to come in on this because he'll have more direct contact with the ECB. I have regular conversations with my fellow directors of cricket around the country. We want cricket on, but I think the Chief spoke very well at the start when he said, we've got to wait, you know, and that is the thing. It is a game of patience. We've got to be positive. We've got to push things, but make sure we come back in a right environment. So T20 will be the first thing I look to get on from a domestic point of view because of the financial gains, which the Chief has mentioned, whether that's with the gates open or from the money from Sky. Red ball cricket, I think we all want. We've got a lot of members on here. We've got 13,000 members. And I'm guessing here, but you can always nod your head or put your hand up, but I'd suggest the majority of our members, predominantly, are members because they want to watch all forms of the game, and most importantly, red ball cricket as well, because they enjoy that form of the game, as well as obviously the other forms on offer. But, you know, there's also talk of, will we be playing it overseas? That I don't know. Again, there's massive expense to take a whole competition overseas, and when would we fit it in? So we've got to listen to all these ideas. We've got to make sure we keep our ears and eyes open, because we're in these times we've never experienced before. So we should never just say no. I think they're worth discussing and then making sensible and wise, well thought through decisions.
Thank you, Stewie. We've got another question just coming on the chat. This is from James, who's known to a few people as Surrey Cricket fan on Twitter. Prolific tweeter, James. He says, are we likely to see Morkel and the other overseas players come back in 2021 if there is no cricket this summer?
Well, first up, we've got to find out what the overseas ruling stroke Colpack rulings are. I remember Colpack's finish at the end of this year. We would want these players coming back. We've got Hashim Amla, we signed him on an initial 2-year contract as a Colpack. Now, again, the whispers are, we will be allowed, but this was before the shutdown, that there would be 2 overseas players allowed in all forms next year. Now, that hasn't been confirmed, but what I can tell you, we saw that Peter Siddle had his contract null and voided for this year at Essex, but is already signed for next year. Well, if he's playing at Essex next year and there's only 1 overseas player, then it means Simon Harmer doesn't get a game for Essex because he's an overseas player. So I'm expecting there to be 2 overseas players next year, which the ECB say are whispering but haven't ratified, and that's despite the headline seeker Michael Vaughan trying to ban overseas players next year.
Lindsay, back to you. There's one again from the chat room. It's a bit of a theme developing here for you, Burnsy. I think it's important you answer your fans on this one. This is from Alex Moon. He says, "I've been inspired to try and grow a moustache. Do you have any top tips?"
Yeah, I have a dad that grows one. My old man looks like Mike Bassett, so I think it's in the genes, that.
So you say, look at the old family photos, and then you take a bit of inspiration and coaching from there.
Yeah, look at the family photos and take inspiration. If your predecessors can do it, then you probably can.
And Stewie, I'm going to ask a few to Richard. I've just got one more for you that I think needs asking. That's just popped into the chat. It's from Ian Woollett. Ian says, "Have any of the coaching staff been watching Church's Garden cricket and spotted any future talent?"
Yeah, I have been. There's couple of points to make. One is I think I'm in negotiations with Deck Chair and the Flowering Pot, but at the minute they're too expensive to sign. And secondly, I am seriously concerned about Mark Church. I think he's going to come back either in a padded cell, because I think he's gone round the bend, isn't he? I mean, he's brilliant, but I don't know about the rest of you. I haven't spent all day in my garden talking to the garden bench or anything else, but it keeps us entertained, doesn't it? But we know he's mad, and that's why we love him.
And Stewie, one is just coming from someone's iPad. He's just asking after your dad. How's he getting on?
Yeah, he's good. I mean, that's one bonus about these things. I can't go and see him. But no, on a serious note, he's going well. We drop some shopping in. I share it with my brother, who doesn't live far from me. So we do the shopping run. Just let you in on a little secret. I thought it was only for essential shopping, which I dropped in. And then he said, "You haven't got me any ice cream cornets." So I then had to go to 3 other shops to try and find him his ice cream wafers or ice cream cones, cornets, whatever they are. Took my life in my own hands to go and do it, and then deliver them. And then I was told they were the wrong make. But he's going.
Excellent. Right, we might come back to you, Burnsy and Stu, later on. Still, if there's any questions, do pop them in. But we'll move on to Richard now. Richard, I think before I ask you a question, is there any chance you could just swing your camera around and show everyone what they're missing?
Yeah, you may not see too much of it, but I promise you, the ground is still here. It hasn't gone anywhere. There was a request for some pictures of the new stand. We'll make sure that we get some taken and put on social media and the website tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. To start going through some questions now, David Cust is from Chalfont St Giles in Buckinghamshire, talking about the new stand as well. He wants you to give him comfort that the finances of the club are in good enough shape to continue with the project and pay the relevant interest and return of capital to both members and financial institution for the foreseeable future. Shout out also to Justin Wilson from Hackford Road, which I think runs parallel to the Brixton and Clapham roads, who wanted to ask the same question.
Yeah, I can give that assurance very confidently. We knew what expenditure was due to go out this year for the new stand, and it is a big project. It's £31 million, and we've made sure that we've got the finance in place, and we've got the cash flow in order to deliver on that. So very, very comfortable on that. That's say we're not taking anything for granted in this in these new worlds. So yeah, we're happy with that. The project is currently on budget. So the last budget numbers landed with me a couple of hours ago. So we know that we're on budget. In terms of programme, there is going to be a delay. We were due to finish in mid-March. The COVID situation has slowed down the manufacturing base in the UK. So whilst we've been able to keep people on site, there was a 3-week period where steel wasn't being supplied to the site, and there is a bit of a shortage of concrete and other elements in some areas. So we haven't been working at full speed. However, we think that the members' facilities will be available by mid-April. That's our new guess for next year. So for the beginning of next season, we're still expecting the members' areas of the new stand to be ready for the start of the season. Above that, there are a couple of other levels. They'll probably follow 4 weeks behind that. So we're looking mid-April and mid-May for completion of the stand, instead of, we've been hoping for mid-March. So there is a bit of a delay on that, but it's I don't think it's going to be a material delay for us.
Richard Jott in the chat room asked, is there any other development plan for the Oval outside of the current work that is ongoing?
People will know that we are in contract to buy the Oval House Theatre site and the White House. That we reported that previously. We haven't completed those purchases yet. We were due to complete them in and around now, but we thought it would be prudent to delay those purchases. So we've delayed those until the end of October. That's with both the theatre and Lambeth's approval, just to allow things to settle down. And we are doing some early planning on what a new Bedser stand could look like. So yes, we've got quite a lot of work ongoing on that, albeit, clearly we don't want to get ahead of ourselves at this point. We just want to be able to finish the tasks that we've started.
A couple of questions on a specific issue. David Custer, who asked the first question from Buckinghamshire, and Richard Gordon from Oxfordshire have asked these questions as well. They're both debenture members, and just wanted to ask about the situation with their debentures and how those will continue given the current situation.
Yeah, I think for debentures, as indeed any member, we've got some big thinking to do. The membership revenue for the club is extremely valuable. And to be honest, we do need to try and keep that cash in the business in order to make sure that the club can continue and be strong. As I said before, that we are taking significant cost-cutting measures across the board elsewhere in order to try and keep the club in a healthy position. I think we're succeeding at that, and even with a weather eye out to a pessimistic season, in the event that we didn't get any cricket in at all this season, I think we would still get through. But to be honest, we'd want to try and keep the membership revenue in as well. And this is something that we need to consider and understand and make sure that we act in a really fair manner for members. And, whether that's significant discounts on future years or trying to provide additional value this year. For example, next year, India are touring. So it may well be that we'll be making sure that members can buy tickets for the India year prior to membership renewal phase, and it may even be that if the West Indies game is cancelled this year, we might try and allow members to buy India tickets at West Indies prices. Those sorts of things. We know how important our members are to us. They're hugely important. They underpin how this club operates, and it's kind of ironic in a world where the 100 has taken so many headlines that cricket and this sport is starting to understand perhaps what we've understood for a long time, which is that it's the members' support and their loyal support which underpins these clubs, and therefore underpins these sports, because it's also members that underpin the purchase of international tickets. And Chairman, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you make the point well. At the end of the day, we are not going to take any member for granted, and these are big decisions that we need to take with regards to membership for this year and next year. The reality is, to an earlier question, are we in a good financial position? Well, the answer to that question is Luckily we are, and not necessarily too much luck. We had an incredible year last year, and any business, any club going into a global pandemic where the economy is switched off that isn't in good shape can very quickly run out of money. Fortunately, we've been run very cautiously, and we have got the money, we think, and we hope, and I'm sure, to get ourselves through this. But I think that will require some support from our membership to be able to do that. We could save more money, we could furlough our players, but we've taken a decision that we don't think it's right that the taxpayer should be paying the salary of a Surrey cricketer. Many other counties have taken that view, and if they're in that position, they're entitled to do that. But we chose not to. However, if we did, that would save money. But our default is to try and do the right thing wherever we can. That's to our members, to the wider and broader cricketing community, and to our players. So I think we need to make some decisions fairly soon with regards to membership. And I think some of the ideas that Richard has mentioned there are all being thought of now, to ensure that nobody feels shortchanged out of this year, and we can make next year as special as we can.
Thanks, Richard. Another question for both of you now. It originally came in from David Freeman in Tonbridge, who is a Surrey member but lives in Tonbridge, so good on David. There's been a lot of chat about this in the Zoom chat room during this meeting as well. David has read an article by George DeBell on Cricinfo about the future of the 100. And he wants to ask quite simply, what is the Surrey position on this for the 2021 season? Richard, Thompson or Gould, whoever wants to take that one first.
Might need both of us, but I mean, I think Surrey's position on this, ironically, when pre-pandemic, the Oval had sold, I mean, Richard can correct me on this, I think we'd sold the most tickets, hadn't we, in any of the 8 venues. So, you know, we voted against it. I think it's always important to give a history lesson on here. There were 3 votes for this. The first vote was for a new T20 competition, which we voted against. There was then another second vote to enshrine a new competition into the articles. By that stage, we'd already lost the votes. There was no point standing against it. And then there was a third vote because a year later, that original T20, the new T20, became 100. And we were the lone voice at 18, and we lost that by 17-1. But we did what we believed was the right thing. I was representing the views of our members, which I know feel very strongly about the 100. And we felt very clearly the game didn't need a 4th format. The season was congested enough, and all it could possibly do is to compromise or cannibalise other tournaments, other parts of the game, particularly the red ball game, which we are I think the loudest voice in supporting red ball cricket as the gold standard of the game. So anything that pushes red ball cricket to the margins is wrong. And certainly playing the 50 over comp during the 100 makes a slight mockery of that too. So we have very strong views on this. We lost 17-1. We don't want to see an empty oval. And as a result of that, we were very successful in selling a lot of tickets for the 100 and a lot of tickets for the Blast. However, next year, I think when the governing body's committed to spending £34 million on a new tournament, I think it would be right to ensure that in this climate, in a world that is going to be financially depleted, that we will be going into a very significant recession, we just need to make sure that that 34 million is the best use of an awful lot of money into a very environment that we're now going into. And I'm sure Richard can add a little bit more to that.
Yeah, I think it's inconsistencies that will cause issues. I think it's even more than 34 million. I've heard upwards of towards 50 million to deliver a competition in 1 year because they've already got quite a lot of sunk costs. And there was a question that came in on the chatter about will there be 18 counties next year? And yeah, I think there will be 18 counties next year. But a lot of counties, including us, will be looking at our cost base significantly. For the smaller counties, and the chairman made this point really well in the Daily Mail last week, a lot of the smaller counties, and I was chief exec of Somerset, which is not an international hosting venue, but those clubs can more or less go into hibernation because you've got much smaller setup, and so you can go into hibernation, perhaps get through a summer and then pop out next year. You know, the cost base of running an international ground is much more significant than that. Electricity bill, 500,000, security, 500,000, rates, 1 million, although we've got a rebate on that. Everything seems to start with either 500,000 or 1 million. And the big ground in London is so expensive to keep. Coming back to the 100 and the inconsistencies, there are, I think, 160 players out of contract across those 18 counties this winter. And Burnsy and Alec might want to come in on this in a minute. A lot of counties are not going to have the money that they were hoping to have, and I think there will be more players than we would otherwise have planned be out of work at the end of this year because of just frankly not enough money in the network, and therefore it's going to make the 100 look quite strange if you're seeing players unemployed next year, but you're paying £120,000 for a 4-week contract for a domestic player in another domestic competition. I think those inconsistencies are things that the ECB will need to focus on. The game's money is the game's money. We've only got a finite amount, and we're going to need to make sure it's supporting the core pillars of this game. Alec, do you want to make a comment at all on players or Rory?
Yeah, I think, Chief, the PCA have a duty here as well, because it's their members. I think they need to be a very loud voice moving forward. They brought in minimum salaries this year, regardless of age. The minimum salary for a professional cricketer is 27,000, and then they brought in rookie contracts as well, which is if you're an 18-year-old, the minimum you can earn is 18 grand. If you're 19 grand, and so on. So that has pushed figures up straight away for this year. And then, as the Chief said, with this knock-on effect and lack of money and loss of money, it doesn't seem right that more money will go, as I call it, out of the game, whether that's to overseas players or a competition which doesn't directly benefit the counties. I'd hope that the PCA will be strong and the ECB will be sensible in ensuring that county cricket stays as strong as it can do, and as many players stay in the game as they can do and aren't released purely on financial situation, when really they can only be released on cricketing ability.
Thanks. So that's...
Right, just a couple of quick updates for people before we crack on with questions. In the only live cricket that is currently ongoing, I can report that the Maverick has gone second ball in the Garden in Cardiff and wasted a review. So Church's team is in trouble at 65 for 4. And also, I just wanted to pick something out of the chat room and report in. It's an update from Martin Searle to everyone, who just like to report in that the Peter May boys are keeping in touch with each other, and like the players, are in a state of February fitness, ready to step up the regime when the time comes. So really, I think everyone's really pleased to hear that the Peter May boys are also just making sure they can count back from when we get the nod to start the season. That's great news. But whilst we were, the question about the 100 was kicked off by someone referencing an article on Cricinfo. We had another question referencing an article from the Daily Telegraph. This is from Kevin Sykes. Kevin asked, the Daily Telegraph reported that England are planning to play all their 6 tests, 6 one-day internationals and 6 T20 internationals at Headingley, Old Trafford and the Ageas Bowl in an effort to salvage as much of their schedule as possible. The report stated that those venues had been selected because they all have on-site hotels and training facilities and could provide biosecure environments for games behind closed doors. Do either of you have a comment to make on this article?
They are planning on that, and they're planning on about 3 other scenarios as well. So Steve Elworthy, who was the organiser of the World Cup last year and the Champions Trophy before that, he's working at the ECB, coming up with a whole variety of different options. I think there was an article this morning from the chairman of Hampshire staking a claim to host those games. Look, I think we've got to do whatever needs to be done in order to get cricket on as safely as possible, as quickly as possible, and then to build confidence from there. And I think those 3 venues are the most likely. Chairman, do you have a comment on that one?
I think it's a good use for the Ageas Bowl. At least no one has spent an hour trying to get in and out of there, so that might help. But I think the reality of it, that if cricket breaches its contracts with its broadcasters, that's a huge impact for all of us. And as much as we want cricket at the Oval, we need cricket in whatever shape it can perform or wherever it's played, because the implications of a cricket-free summer are just too huge to contemplate. So I think they will contemplate playing behind closed doors, as every sport is considering, and other social distancing measures. I mean, the point Richard made earlier over biosecurity, I don't see how you could keep any venue completely biosecure, whatever that means, and people coming and going. But I think the reality is, whatever we do going forward, there's going to be risks attached to it. And until, I think there's somebody said on the chat, on the messages there, until there's a vaccine, we are walking a tightrope. But we've got to find a way of playing cricket somewhere, somehow. Talking about extending the season as well, we could comfortably play into October if we have to, and we can play overseas if we have to. But we need to be playing cricket somewhere. Obviously, the Oval would be the preference, but I think anywhere is better than nowhere.
Thanks, Richard. We'll go back to some of those points that you've made in a minute. There's some other questions still to come.
Hold on a minute.
Hang on a second. Someone started screen sharing. So there we go. I think we're back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're back. There we go. So this is a question from Ross Farmer, who emailed in. Ross has pointed out that in certain places the yearbook is relatively hard to read. I'll take that one because I was responsible for putting that together. And thanks to the feedback, Ross, we will bear that in mind in future years.
Just on that one, sir, if I may, because there was an excellent book that came out also this year. Churchy, you're sharing your screen. You may not wish to do that, Mr. Mark Church. Thank you. The yearbook's been really well received. There was one thing that was in the yearbook which we liked, which was well, there are lots of things in there we like, but one of the things was a list of all the members this year put into the members book, and we think we're going to try and take that one step further, and in our 175th year, and try and thank members for their loyalty. We're aiming to put some kind of a large board up in the new stand development with a list of everybody who was a member this year. So we think that would be a nice visible way of people be able to recognise being part of the club, not just in this 175th year, but also in this very strange year where the club has really needed the support of its members. Sorry for the interlude, sir.
No, that's great. And just to alert people, Richard is in the chat as well, responding to certain comments. So if your question isn't asked by me directly, Richard may have responded to it or put a relevant comment in the chat. So just to encourage everyone, do have a look at the chat and see some of Richard's answers in there. A question now, Richard, from a little further afield. Again, I think one for both either you or the chairman. This is from Mukund Chorhade. I apologise if I've brutalised your surname on that one, sir. He hails from Hillsborough in New Jersey, in America, and he asks, what best can I do to promote Surrey in the USA and India?
I think people like baseball caps, so please buy a Surrey baseball cap and always wear it.
And I think he's probably got more chance of selling Hillsborough, New York than Hillsborough in Sheffield.
Mukund has also asked a slightly more serious question. He travels 3,494 miles every year. He makes sure he comes to the Oval every year. And he wonders that may there be a slightly discounted rate for international membership? Richard Gould, maybe you could answer that one.
That would be quite a niche membership category for our American friends, which we tend not to do. But when you're over, give me a shout and I'll buy you a beer.
David Sedgwick has been in the chat. He has asked if there is going to be no cricket played in front of a crowd at the Oval this year, what is the possibility of tours being restarted again, tours of the ground? And Tim Redsall has added a supplementary on that one, asking whether we could now start including the score box in the tour. So maybe if you could just let them know about that.
Yeah, we've had to stop tours whilst the social distancing measures are in, and as soon as those are lifted and we think there's demand, then we'll get those tours back up and running, because they're a really popular feature here at the Kia Oval. And of course, if people want to come and see the scorer's box, we'll add that on.
Fantastic. I've got a question for Richard, Gould and Thompson. This is from Ros Trinick in the chat. She has asked, and I will read out the question in full. Given how amazing Surrey is for women's cricket and the success of the Surrey Stars, I was a bit surprised that there isn't a single woman on the ballot paper for the election for General Committee. Last year, there was just one woman. Is the club keen to have better representation on the General Committee? And if so, what steps are being taken to address it?
Yeah, we're really keen. We have got 4 women on the General Committee of 16 so far. I replied directly earlier and said it was 3. I got that wrong. There are 4. And we've also got representation on the management board. The key to that is we just really like to encourage people to put their names forward for the General Committee election that takes place every year. We are in the middle of that process at the moment, or coming towards the end of that process. We had a team of about 10 staff come in yesterday into the long room, working in safe, socially distanced ways to initiate the count. We had, I think it was 9 members put their name forward for election this year. 4 will get through. Not everybody will get through, but we're always delighted and really very grateful when people are prepared to put their name on the list. And put themselves up for election to the General Committee.
I'll just add, I mean, I think Lizzie Conda came back to somebody on the chat as well. I mean, we have got 4, which is, to my understanding, as many or more than any other county, and that represents, in terms of membership, nearly a third, well, around 25% of the committee is made up of women, and we would love more women to stand. We make a point of, on the website, you can see how to stand. I think it's a valid point that we are very, very pro women's cricket, and obviously everything that women's cricket has achieved in the last few years, we push very hard. So any way we can encourage more women to stand, we absolutely will. We've even got 2 from one family, the brilliant Garrards, but they can always be.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to pop in a few more questions now from the chat room to Stewie and to Burnsy. Either one of you would like to take this one. What is the latest news on Gareth Batty? Is he likely to return this summer should there be cricket?
Where's he been?
Well, as Gareth, I think he's at home abiding by social distancing regulations. I think they just wanted specifically he's clearly someone's favourite player. They want a specific update on Bats.
Yeah, Gareth is very well. He's part of the playing squad. But until we know when we're playing, he'll be continuing to do what every other player is doing. But he's in good form, good shape, looking after his family, training well, and we'll be ready to go when we get the thumbs up.
Excellent. Stewie, Luke Saunders has asked, once the virus is over, is there a chance for members to have a signing session with the players?
Yeah, once social distancing returns to normality. The boys are very, very good, and hopefully all the members agree with that. They're very good at signing autographs and that type of thing, whether it's young and old. So yeah, listen, that's part of being a professional sportsman, is to try and help people. And if it means signing an autograph or having a selfie or whatever, then 100%. But as I think we all realise, we've got to wait until the time is right.
Fantastic. Burns, there's been a few people trying to sign you up for various different teams. But the most direct question I can find is, who was your cricketing hero growing up?
There wasn't one, there were 2. It was Butch, because I got told to put my hands up like him when I was younger, and obviously Lara was doing something quite similar. So they were the 2 that I watched probably the most, and I've tried to become a hybrid somewhere in between and forge my own path of the backlift.
That is excellent answer. Moving back, I think, to off the field questions. Richard, there's one from Michael Redman, who's a member. He's emailed in suggesting that one idea to raise money would be to introduce a life membership scheme. He's also suggested that those who have bought test match tickets might be willing to lend the money to the club for next year's tickets. I just wonder what your thoughts on Michael's plan was there.
Yeah, the club hasn't had a life membership scheme for quite a long time, and I think partly because it's difficult to come up with the sort of appropriate price point and all the rest of it, depending on age. And that's something that we could certainly look at on that basis. And what was the second part of the question?
The second part of the question is more of a suggestion. He said those who have bought Test match tickets might be willing to lend the money to the club for next year's tickets. What do you think about that? As a
yeah, that's something that we would really like to look at. You know, a lot of people have bought tickets for the West Indies Test match. If that doesn't take place this year, clearly there will be a refund. Next year it's an India Test match, and we've seen the schedule, or we've seen a couple of drafts of the schedule, and so we're expecting to host as normal the final India Test match sometime late August, early September. And in that regard, you know, we may offer up the ability for ticket holders to simply swap their tickets for an India Test next year. That would help us keep some cash in the business, and would also provide ticket purchases with an India Test at West Indies prices, which are cheaper generally. So that there could be a win-win for everybody there. Thank you.
A more specific question has been asked by a number of different members in one form or another in the chat room and in advance. Shout outs here to Mark Percy from Ealing, Caroline Bailey from Wallington, Paul Martin from Greenwich, and Amin Rahim again. I think he was from Leytonstone. They've all asked these questions in different ways, in different phrases, different terminologies, but to boil it down, if there's little or no cricket this season, what is the position on refunding of membership fees?
Yeah, I think that comes back to the discussion we had earlier in terms of we need to wait and see how much cricket we get in this year, and hopefully we get as much as possible. We also need to understand the financial position of the club this year, and make sure that we don't do anything silly that would harm our long-term future, and then investigate ways in which we can provide value to members, maybe through very significant discounts on future years, rather than refund of this year when cash is so important to us. But that we're a members club, I think we've got some time to make those decisions, and it was interesting to see some of the stuff that was coming through on the chats there. Thank you for that feedback. We're a members club, and ultimately those decisions will be made by the people that represent the members.
Yeah, I mean, the comments coming up, sir, are really helpful, because we might not get a chance to cover every one of them off, but this is a very good guide as to what the issues are and what you're feeling, and to have a forum with over 300 people on, it's a good representative number. So we will probably take some of these points away, particularly with regards to membership. But I've noticed as well, there's a number of questions coming up with regards to women's cricket, because we haven't discussed that yet. I'm sure Richard can touch on that as well. But I mean, women's cricket, similar to the men's game, is in lockdown. I think with regards to the season being on hold, I don't know if we can touch on any of the fixture situations on that, Richard.
Yeah, I've just got off the phone with Richard Bedbrook, who, as you know, is the head coach for our women's team, and also is speaking to Ebony Rainford-Brent earlier today on another call. There isn't currently a schedule for the women's teams. It's likely that the Oval Invincibles women's team won't play if the 100 gets cancelled tomorrow. We do have a good, strong Surrey women's team. They have a training schedule which they would be adhering to if the lockdown hadn't progressed. But in the absence of that, they're still receiving strength and conditioning training and fitness work remotely through our coaches. In addition, we have been selected as the host county for a women's regional centre of excellence. This is a new initiative. There are 8 of them spread across the country, and we've been selected to host the one in the south and east of England. We are looking, as part of that, to employ between 3 and 4 professional women's cricketers in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're hoping. So that will be the start of that. So apologies for not covering it prior to this, but there is a lot of work and focus going on women's cricket behind the scenes, and waiting for the moment when we can actually get more games on.
Great. A couple for Alec and Rory again. Someone's asking for a good cricket book for lockdown reading. Any thoughts on that one?
Stewie? No books?
No, my one was a long time ago. I use it as a doorstop now. Wisdom's always good. That's always good to flick through. But listen, we've all got so much time. Nothing springs to mind currently, I have to admit, that's come out recently. But Burnsy, you're the philosopher and everything else. Have you got anything to add? You've got a vast library.
Might have a vast library. None of them are actually specifically cricket related though, so I can't actually assist on that.
Well, what a lot of the lads are doing, and Burnsy, are reading, other sports, so you can learn from business books as well, leadership and that type of thing. So, it's good that the lads and management are utilising this time, not just at cricket, but also expanding knowledge as well.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Stewie. And that's my finger there. Just someone suggesting, Rory, that Chris White should bat 3 for England, which I think is an interesting one. Any thoughts on that one?
He's a man of many talents, so he probably could find a role up there. But I would suggest that there are a few guys putting their hands up currently for those top 3 spots, and Wokesy might not be in that.
I'd just like to pick up on some stuff on recreational cricket, because I've seen a few questions flying through on the state of recreational cricket. It is really tough for recreational clubs out there, and we are keeping in close contact with them through the Surrey Cricket Foundation. There was a big conference call last week, and there were 103 clubs on that call. Clearly, money is an issue. How do clubs continue to operate in a sustainable fashion if the bars are closed and there's no matches taking place? And we are in close contact with the clubs to try and make sure that they remain as healthy a position as possible. There are 8 or 9 clubs that we know of that have got significant specific problems, and the Cricket Foundation team is working very closely with them. Some money has been made available, so ECB have made available some loans that can be drawn on immediately, but also local councils have been quite helpful, because as part of the Chancellor's measures, grants have been made available to small businesses, and many small cricket clubs, because they have accounts and all the rest of it, count as small businesses. So we know a lot of clubs that have been able to pull in £10,000 grants, which is quite good. But just to let people know that we're not just focused on the club here. We're looking and focusing on the wider cricketing family across Surrey, and we've through the Cricket Foundation we've got we think a reasonable handle on what's going on.
We're drawing towards the end now, but Richard, just going back to the book recommendation question. There's a lot of book recommendations going into the chat at the moment, so if anyone does need cricket books, do look in there. Richard Thompson has just been in recommending the new Michael Henderson book. But I just wanted to touch on the club's retail arm, because there's been a bit of a change in that this week, and obviously there's the new 175th anniversary book that's been written, and there's been a slight change to the retail side of stuff this week. If you want to just update people on that.
Yeah, we have furloughed some staff, and the retail part was something that we had furloughed. But we've had something like 120 orders over the last week with people wanting to buy stuff online, which is great to see. So he's now back in. Somebody did ask earlier as to how many staff have been furloughed, and the answer is 59 at the moment. Many of them are from our events arm, Oval Events Limited. Clearly, we normally run a very, very vibrant events business here, hosting around 1,500-1,600 events per year. All of that, all the sales and all the operations from that has stopped literally overnight, and we don't know when it's going to start up again. So unfortunately, they make up the bulk of the staff that we've had to furlough, but we do stay in contact. We had a staff call this morning, not dissimilar to this, with about 140 people on the line, and the chairman managed to raise spirits at the end of it by getting us all to sing a bit of karaoke, which was excellent. I'm not sure if he's going to do the same to us all in a few minutes when we close the call. We'll have to find out what he's got up his sleeve. But I think we're kind of drawing to a close now. John, is there any final burning questions that you've got coming through?
Yeah, there was one topic I just wanted to bring up, which is a few people have mentioned in the chat, which is around the digital stuff that the club is doing. Someone was asking about whether the club could, during this time when there's no cricket able to be played, whether they could start streaming old highlights and old footage. We're doing that. That is currently happening on our Facebook page. If you look at the club social media platforms, there'll be good signposts to that, or if you just go to facebook.com/Surrey Cricket. We are currently rescreening the 2018 season, and tomorrow will be the final day of our second game of that season against Lancashire at Old Trafford. So that'll all be there. That is there on our Facebook page currently for people to watch. And someone else has asked about the future, as and when we are maybe able to play games again this season, hopefully, in terms of how those games might be covered, Richard, whether there'll be enhanced coverage from the ground for games that may not be televised on Sky. Yeah, and I think we said that we're going to stream all those games on Facebook, and so there'll be excellent coverage of those. We've got a 6 or 7 camera operation for that. I'm going to hand over to the chairman to sum up. From me, thank you so much for everyone that's attending. I hope that we don't have to run one of these again, but we may well do. And if it becomes a monthly event for the next month or two, then we'll be very pleased to see you, but we'd much rather see you in the flesh. Thank you for the screen sharing there. Someone saying, come on the row. Chairman, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, I think you've already started doing it, and I'm reading a lot of the comments that are coming through on the Zoom group chat. I think we don't need a quarantine or a lockdown to do another one of these, and to have actually reached, I think at peak 365 people were on the line. We should definitely think about doing these again if we can reach that number of people. Sadly, it's now gone down to 276. I think that's when we started talking about what books Alec Stewart should read, and suddenly the call volumes dropped off the floor, which is awful. But there's a few other comments I'd like to make. I have had a little look at some of the screenshots, and I'd like to say very well done for some of the backgrounds. I'm looking at Dave Hannam's background here of the Oval, which is fantastic. Michael Wheeler, Mike Thorne, and Laura and James Rolls have made a big effort on their backgrounds. So I think we'll have a background competition when we do this next time, although Trish Garrard is officially fined for wearing an England cricket shirt and not a Surrey England cricket shirt, which is very poor indeed. Trish, you should know better. But thank you for your time. Some brilliant questions. These forums are only as good as the input you give. You will always get honesty and transparency from any of the speakers that are here today to contribute. There's a real sense of community spirit within Surrey, and we've got to keep that alive and certainly do as many of these as we can to give you that connection to answer these questions. And certainly we're going to have to make a few decisions about some of the points made on today's call in the next month or so. And that's probably when, as Richard suggested, we maybe do another one of these in a few weeks to bring everyone up to speed as to some of the outcomes of that. Now, Richard did give the surprise away, and I am a bit worried about press screen save, but anything could pop up. But there is one song that I think in the summer that really reminds me of Surrey. Those of you that come to the T20s in particular will probably enjoy this song, but it just brings everything. Look, Richard is now very concerned about what I'm about to play. But if you can bear with me on the technology, this is Surrey's very first group karaoke. I'd ask you to turn your own volumes up, and you're very welcome to sing along. And I hope you enjoy the anthem of T20s at the Oval.
And then we can get that moving.
It became the summer. Who'd have believed it could come along?
Touching hands. reaching out, touching me, touching you. Caroline.
Quit it.
Should be the non-touching version.
With
Only two.
And when I heard curtain runs off my shoulder, how can I hurt
with you?
Touching.
reaching out?
Touching me! Touching you! Sweet
Caroline.
Seems so good.
So good.
So good. So good. Believe they
Never would.
Well, look, I will say goodbye now. I hope you enjoyed that. Stay safe, stay well, and look forward to seeing you in better times to the sound of Leather and Willow. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Richard.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Richard.
Thanks very much, everyone.
See you later, everyone.